40 years of marriage, complete with a saxophonist and a catered fondue table. The kind of event where people take pictures of wine glasses just to prove they were there. Fallon wore emerald green. I wore the smile of a man pretending to enjoy being ignored. They called for couples to dance. I looked at her. She looked at Corbin, and that's when she stood up. Not with me, with him. She didn't even ask, didn't even glance my way like it was a decision. She just went. I watched them glide across the floor like they'd rehearsed, like they'd earned it. Her laughter rose above the music. Not the polite kind she used on phone calls with clients, but the real kind. The one that curled at the edges and made her forget I was in the room. I wasn't surprised. Earlier that week I had come home early and found 2 glasses in the sink. One with her lipstick, one with nothing but fingerprints. She said it was the neighbor, but we don't talk to our neighbors. I asked what they talked about. She said I was being insecure. I wasn't. I was being erased. So I sat there at the table, my untouched drink fizzing out, while the love of my life slowed danced with a man who looked at her like he already had her. My tie felt tighter with every beat of the song. People clapped as they twirled, and I wondered how many of them knew or pretended not to. When she finally came back to our table, cheeks pink, her perfume slightly unfamiliar, I stood up without a word and walked toward the exit. She followed me, her heels clicking against the tile like a ticking clock. Out in the corridor I turned to her, not angry, not even loud, just broken, and I said the only thing I could muster. If you go back out there and dance with him again, we won't be having the same talk later. She blinked, tilted her head and said, "Is that supposed to scare me?" Then she walked back inside. That moment, that was it. Not the end of the relationship, not yet. But the moment I knew this version of us was dead and I was the only one mourning. You'd think that would be the climax. It wasn't. That was the soft part of the storm because what happened the next morning made that dance look like a warm-up act. The next morning, Fallon was humming. That was the first red flag. She never hummed in the mornings. Normally, she scrolled silently on her phone with one hand while drinking coffee with the other, barely blinking in my direction. But that day, she floated around the kitchen like she was in a shampoo commercial, flipping pancakes, even asking if I wanted one shaped like a heart. The scent of syrup and deceit filled the room, and I just sat there, spooning cereal, watching her like she was a stranger who had let herself in. "About last night," she began, not even looking at me. "You seriously overreacted." I didn't reply. I couldn't because the second she turned her back, I stared at her phone sitting on the counter. Face up, no lock screen, open Instagram app. Her notifications popped like fireworks. Messages from names I didn't recognize. One in particular made my blood freeze. "Corbin's speech balloon last night was perfect. Wish he didn't have to leave." She turned just in time to see me holding it. Everything stopped. She didn't snatch the phone. She didn't scream. She didn't apologize. She laughed like I just caught her sneaking an extra cookie instead of breaking our marriage in half. "What are you doing?" she said calmly, snooping now. "Is that who you've become?" I asked one question. "Did you sleep with him?" She didn't answer it. She just rolled her eyes like I'd spilled milk instead of trust. "You don't understand our friendship," she said. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I did something worse. I stayed quiet. And when she left for work in that same emerald green dress she wore last night, still smelling like his cologne, I walked into the bedroom and opened her laptop. She never logged out, not from anything. It was as if she didn't expect I'd ever look. She wasn't wrong. I never had until now. Gmail, Facebook, Dropbox, WhatsApp, all open. And right there in a folder on her desktop named Event Proposals was a file that didn't belong. A text document titled Simply Convo, 2 a.m. I clicked it, and there it was. A transcript of a chat between her and Corbin. Except it wasn't flirtation. It was a plan. Not just one affair, not just a mistake. A plan to leave me, to move in with him, to empty our joint account once her next bonus hit, and take the dog. Even worse, they referred to me like I was already gone. He won't even fight it, she typed. He's too fragile. He'll let go quietly. I sat there shaking, not from rage, from the sheer humiliation of being seen that way by the one person who vowed to protect my heart. I copied the file, emailed it to myself. Then I logged out of everything, closed the laptop, sat on the floor, and cried into my hands like a child lost in a mall. That evening, she came home whistling. That was her second mistake. The first was dancing with him, but the third that came later when I showed her what I had planned, and unlike her little folder, mine wasn't digital. It was something far more real and irreversible. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't even let her know I had read everything. I watched Fallon eat her reheated pasta like nothing in the world had shifted. She made small talk about an upcoming client dinner, laughed about some office joke I didn't ask to hear, and scrolled through her phone every time I spoke, like I was just background noise. I said nothing. I observed because what do you do when the person you trusted most in the world plots your removal like you're a bad investment? You don't yell. You don't gravel. You plan quietly, carefully, with the same precision they thought they had over you. So that night, once she was asleep, turned away from me as usual, I got out of bed and began moving. Slowly, silently, I took only what I needed. My documents, my passport, a few clothes, my hard drive. I left my toothbrush. I left my wedding ring on her nightstand. And I left a note. I didn't write a goodbye. I didn't write something poetic or dramatic. I just copied her words. He won't even fight it. He'll let go quietly. I left it right next to her phone. Then I walked out, not knowing where I'd sleep, just knowing I couldn't stay. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town using cash. It smelled like bleach in desperation, but it was safe. I sat on the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, and listened to the silence. The first honest silence I'd had in months. My phone buzzed 3 hours later. Then again, 10 missed calls, 17 messages, all from her. The first few were casual. Fallon, where are you? Fallon, I woke up and thought you went for a walk, LOL. Fallon, Chester, are you okay? Then came the shift. Fallon, why would you snoop through my things? Fallon, that file wasn't even real, it was just venting. Fallon, you always do this. You spiral. But I didn't spiral. I stayed calm. Because when you've already fallen apart in private, nothing they say can shake you again. Then finally, she sent the one that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. Fallon, can we talk? This is all just a huge misunderstanding. A misunderstanding like I had walked in on her hiding a surprise party and not a new life with another man. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a separate bank account using the funds I'd moved from our joint account the night before. Funds that were legally mine, by the way. I didn't touch hers. I just made sure she couldn't touch mine because she and Corbin had been planning to clean it out on Friday. But I beat them to it by 2 days. The next step was harder. Telling people. I sent my sister a voice note. I couldn't speak without cracking, so I kept it short. I left. I'll explain everything later. Please don't tell Fallon where I am. She replied instantly. I know. I saw the texts. I've known for weeks. And that crushed me in a whole different way because the betrayal wasn't just inside my house. It was outside it, too. Quiet. Hidden. everyone letting me drown while pretending to smile at family barbecues. But the real twist that was still coming, because what Fallon didn't know was that her little Convo 2 a.m. document had metadata, timestamps, IP addresses. It had been synced to her cloud account automatically, and that meant I wasn't the only one who saw it. Someone else did too, someone neither of us expected. And what they did next? It changed everything. I didn't expect to hear from Corbin, ever. I assumed, like most snakes, he'd slither out of the picture the second things got messy. But 3 days after I walked out, I received a message from a private number. No name, no introduction, just a screenshot. It was a photo of Fallon's conversation. 2 a.m. document. The exact one I'd found on her laptop. But it wasn't from my inbox. It was forwarded from his. Then came the text beneath it. "We need to talk." She lied to both of us. I stared at the message for a full hour. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a taunt. Maybe some arrogant boast about winning. But not this. Not someone else who sounded betrayed. I met Corbin the next day, against my better judgment, in a dusty diner 2 towns over. I wore a hoodie and sat in the back booth like I was trying to disappear into the upholstery. He looked worse than I imagined. Hollow-eyed, jittery, not the polished predator I remembered from the ballroom. He slid his phone across the table. "You didn't know the half of it," he said flatly. What I saw next spun the whole story sideways. There were dozens of messages between him and Fallon. Yes, many of them flirty, many of them laced with contempt for me. But something was off. Corbin wasn't the one initiating anything. Fallon was. Every time she pursued him, she hinted, she pushed, she teased. He resisted. At first, even asked, "Doesn't your husband deserve more respect than this?" She replied, "He's not a real man. He'll survive." And then came the kicker. A message dated just days before the party. "Fallon, honestly, I'm just stringing him along until my account hits the right number. After that, you and I can figure it out, or not. Either way, I'm done pretending." Corbin looked at me, hands trembling around his coffee. "She told me she was leaving you. She told me you were abusive, that you followed her to work, that you monitored her phone." I almost believed her. He leaned in, voice low. "She used both of us." Man, I wanted to feel vindicated. I didn't. I felt numb. This wasn't just betrayal, it was orchestration. She had engineered every angle, weaponized every detail, turned me into the villain in a story where I hadn't even known I was a character. "You didn't sleep with her?" I asked quietly. He looked disgusted. "Once the night of the fundraiser, she came to my place drunk. I didn't know she was still with you. She said she was filing the papers." He paused, and then she tried to crash here 2 nights ago. I told her to get out. She lost it, said I ruined her plan. So it was true. Everything. The affair, the file, the joint account plot. But now, with Corbin out of the picture, her plan had collapsed. She had nothing. No money, no man, no clue where I was. And still she was trying to spin the narrative. That same afternoon, I received a call from my employer. Fallon had tried to reach me at work, claiming I'd left in a mental health spiral and that she was concerned for my safety. I laughed loud, then told HR to document her call and block her number from all company lines. They were more than happy to oblige once I showed them what I had. Messages, screenshots, call logs, even security footage from our shared home smart doorbell, showing her sneaking out at 1 a.m. in heels while I slept alone inside. But I wasn't done. Fallon thought she'd built her story so well that no one would dare question it. What she didn't realize was that I'd been documenting everything now. Not for revenge. For protection. I sent a message to her sister, someone Fallon had always treated like a backup plan. She and I had barely spoken in years, but I attached one file, one screenshot. No explanation. Her reply came 3 minutes later. "Oh my God, I knew something was off. You don't deserve this. I'm coming over." And she did. She brought wine, tissues, and her own confessions. Turns out Fallon had been lying to her family too, claiming I was distant, claiming I withheld money, claiming I had ruined her career with my jealous fits, none of which were true. But her sister had noticed things. The cash withdrawals, the sudden trips, the disappearing jewelry from their grandmother's estate. Fallon had been liquidating everything, and now she was running out of places to hide. But she wasn't done because Fallon still had one weapon left, and she used it that night. Not against me, against herself. And what she did next, it changed the tone of this entire story. It was 2:14 in the morning when my phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. And I knew before I even picked it up that something had snapped. Fallon's sister Mallory was asleep on my couch. She'd passed out after 2 glasses of red and a 5-hour confessional about all the lies Fallon had told the family over the past 3 years. We were supposed to talk to a lawyer the next morning. We had a folder, dates, evidence. I had structure for the first time in months. Then came that call. I didn't recognize the number, area code 2 towns over. The voice on the other end was strained. Male, firm, clinical. "Is this Chester Malone?" "Yes," I croaked. "This is Officer Breen with the Riverview Police Department. Your wife Fallon was brought in a short while ago. We need you to come down to the station. She listed you as next of kin." My blood went cold. What happened? She attempted to break into a residence. She was incoherent, possibly intoxicated. Claimed it was her home, but the property is owned by a man named Corbin Lasky. You familiar? I closed my eyes. My body folded in on itself. Yes, I know him. The officer paused, then added, "She also mentioned a threat, something about being watched. Paranoia. Maybe we'll need someone to come speak to her in the morning once she's medically cleared." I thanked him, hung up, and just sat there in the dark, staring at the wall like it would tell me what to do next. Fallon had finally broken, not through guilt or reflection, but because her own illusion had collapsed under the weight of her games. And now, she was spiraling. Mallory stirred on the couch, sat up with puffy eyes. "Was that her?" "Police," I said quietly. "She tried to get into Corbin's house. She's being held." Mallory's face didn't twist in shock or sympathy, just resignation. "She's unraveling," she whispered. "She's been on this edge for a long time." I didn't think she'd go that far, but she had, and it wasn't over. Later that morning, I drove to the station. I didn't do it for her. I did it for closure. I needed to see for myself that the woman who had twisted my life into a carnival nearer was real. Not a monster, not a villain, not some shadow from a nightmare. Just human, broken, just like me. They let me into a small visitation room, one of those gray, soul-sapping boxes with a bolted-down table and 2 mismatched chairs. And then they brought her in. She looked nothing like herself. No makeup, hair tangled, sweatshirt inside out. But it wasn't the appearance that gutted me. It was the emptiness in her eyes, like she wasn't even home anymore. She sat down slowly, then looked at me for a long time. No hello, no tears, just, "You didn't come home." I didn't speak. She pressed her palms flat on the table. Corbin blocked me. "You left." Mallory doesn't answer. I was alone. I thought maybe. She trailed off, swallowing the rest. I saw her throat tighten. I don't remember everything. The last few days are blurry. I finally asked, "Why did you write that file?" She blinked. Which one? Convo 2 a.m. The plan, the lies. The part where you said you were just waiting for my account to hit the right number. She looked away, biting her thumbnail, suddenly childlike. I don't know. It felt like I needed a way out, like I was trapped. I wasn't going to do it. I just needed to imagine I had power. That word, power, lodged in my chest like a blade because that's what it was. Not love, not longing, just control the entire time. She leaned forward, desperate now. I wasn't going to leave. I was just stuck, and he made me feel seen. And I didn't. She looked at me like I'd asked if the sky was purple, like I was the one out of touch. That was the moment I knew we weren't in the same story anymore, and maybe never had been. I'm not here to fix this, I said finally. I'm here to make sure you get the help you need, and to tell you I'm done being the invisible casualty of your mess. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just a breath and the faintest flicker of understanding. Or maybe just recognition that she no longer had control. I stood up. You'll be released in the morning. Mallory will be outside, but I won't. I left that station without looking back, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt weightless, like I had stepped out of a gravity well that had kept me anchored to a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. But the fallout wasn't over because someone else had seen the file too. Not Corbin, not Mallory. Someone I had forgotten about entirely. And they were about to bring everything to light publicly. It started with a shared Google Drive, an old one, back when Fallon and I ran a tiny side hustle offering event consultations, a passion project she pitched during the pandemic. Back when we used to dream and sync, we had a few clients, made a few bucks, then shelved the whole thing when her new job offered more money and less of me. But the account remained, and I had forgotten we'd ever connected it to anything personal until I got a notification that a folder had been downloaded by someone else. The folder name Malone plus Fallon Final Drafts. Inside it, by pure accident or cruel irony, was a copy of her Convo 2 a.m. document, a backup I didn't know existed, time-stamped, synced, and accessed by none other than our former client, Heather Choi, a woman known in our city for throwing high-profile fundraisers and never forgetting a favor or a betrayal. The next day, my phone didn't stop ringing. My inbox lit up. My LinkedIn pinged. My email, the one I hadn't used since we shut down our side hustle, filled with stunned subject lines. Is this real? You okay? Thought you should see this. Heather had shared it. Not just shared it. Published it on her blog. On her Facebook. In a blind item post titled, When the Fairy Tale is Fraud, How One Power Couple Exploded Behind the Scenes. She didn't name us directly, but she didn't need to. The references were surgical. Fallon's job title, my name shortened to CM. Their affair described with cold clinical notes lifted directly from the file. Even Corbin's initials were enough for the local socialite circle to piece it together. And suddenly, people knew. Not just friends, not just coworkers. Everyone. Fallon's curated image, the composed, successful, non-nonsense professional woman, had just shattered, and the sound echoed across every inbox in her network. I didn't publish it. I hadn't even shared it, but it no longer mattered. The truth was in the wild now, like a wildfire that didn't care who it scorched on the way out. Mallory saw the post and called me immediately, furious and amazed. Heather must have downloaded it ages ago, maybe when Fallon forwarded the wrong link. This is insane. She was pacing. I could hear her boots on concrete. Do you want me to take it down? I paused. No, I said finally. Let people decide what they believe. Because for so long Fallon had built a fortress out of half-truth and charm. She used silence as a weapon. She made me feel small in rooms we entered together. And now, for the first time, people saw what I'd been living with, not because I screamed, not because I retaliated, but because the truth, when buried, finds its own voice. It was surreal watching it play out. Coworkers reached out, some apologizing for believing her lies, others quietly stepping away, unwilling to get involved. Corbin stayed silent, likely too afraid to admit any part in it. And Fallon, she tried to play victim. She posted an Instagram story of a quote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The next slide was a picture of her staring out a window, wine in hand, with a caption that read, "Healing through storms." And the comments? They weren't what she expected. Someone asked if the quote was from the same file where she plotted to drain our bank account. Another simply posted, "How's Corbin?" By sunset, she deleted the post. By midnight, she deleted her account, but her silence was too late. The story was already traveling in whispers. Her boss suspended her. Her best friend unfollowed her. Even her mother called me apologizing. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt something even better. See, for the first time in years, I wasn't the ghost in the relationship. I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the fool sitting at the table while she danced with someone else. I was the man who stayed quiet until the truth spoke louder than she ever expected. But one person still hadn't reached out. Fallon, until she did. 3 days later, I received a letter handwritten, delivered by courier. No envelope, just folded paper pressed tight like it was holding its breath. Inside were 3 sentences. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know I didn't start this to hurt you. I only ever wanted to feel chosen." And at the bottom, scribbled in the corner, "You were always too kind to me." I sat there for a long time holding that paper. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt done. But life wasn't, because there was still one more twist coming. One I never saw coming. One that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with the truth I hadn't uncovered yet. The envelope came on a Wednesday, not from Fallon, not from her family. It was slid under the door of the motel room. I was still holed up in room 206 at the Pine Grove, in the kind of place where secrets cling to the carpet, and the front desk doesn't ask for ID if you pay in cash. There was no return address, no name. Just a thick yellow packet sealed with cheap tape and a post-it slapped on the front that read, "You deserve to know all of it." At first I thought it might be another reaction to the blog post. I'd received a few anonymous messages already, some sympathetic, some weirdly bitter, some congratulating me on escaping the fire, like I'd been part of a viral scandal. But this wasn't that. This was something deeper, something colder. Inside the packet were printed emails, over 50 pages. Each page, a thread between Fallon and someone I'd never heard of before. Initials D.H. The conversations dated back over a year, long before Corbin, long before the fundraiser, long before the emotional distance even started showing in our marriage. The earliest email was titled, "Re-First Meeting. Sorry for the awkward exit." It was sent from Fallon's work email to a private Gmail account. The body of the email read, "He's harmless. I'll figure out a way to transition out soon. Thanks for being patient with me." And then it hit me. Corbin hadn't been the first. He had been the backup. This man, D.H., had been her first plan, the original one. From the tone of the messages, he had even funded part of her escape strategy. She talked about bank accounts, about needing to play the long game. She referenced our joint finances, the same ones she'd later try to empty with surgical intent. It wasn't just cheating, It wasn't even manipulation. It was a strategy deck dressed up as a love affair. And worse, this man had never been mentioned once in any of her explanations. She had erased him entirely. Not because she felt guilt, but because it didn't fit the narrative she wanted to sell. After everything exploded, I flipped deeper into the printouts. Midway through, one email stuck out. It was dated 2 weeks before I left. Fallon to DH. You were right. He found the file, but I spun it. I think he believes it was just fantasy. Still, if anything leaks, we'll need to shut down the burner accounts ASAP. I left breadcrumbs that make Corbin look like the initiator. If it gets messy, he'll take the fall. My hands went cold. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had framed Corbin to protect herself. I thought back to the diner, to Corbin's twitchy hands, his sleepless eyes. He hadn't known the whole story. He had truly believed he was the one falling into her trap, not realizing he was a scapegoat. She had already wired into the bottom of the pit. But now, someone had sent me these emails, someone who wanted me to know just how deep the layers went. And they knew enough about me to deliver it to the motel without being seen. I looked at the final page. Scrolled in handwriting across the bottom was a single line. You left, but she didn't stop. Be careful. The weight of that sentence hit me harder than all the screenshots combined. Because up until that point, I thought I'd reached the bottom of the story. The heartbreak, the fallout, the scandal. But this wasn't just betrayal or cruelty, it was a game. Once she kept playing long after I left the board. I called Mallory immediately. She picked up on the first ring. I've been waiting for you to call. Did you get it? You sent the packet. No, but I know who did. Her voice dropped lower. It was Daniela, Fallon's old co-worker. She got fired 6 months ago for accessing restricted files. She and Fallon had a falling out, a bad one. I think she held on to this stuff as insurance. Why give it to me now? She read the blog post. She realized Fallon's spin had collapsed. She wants you to know the truth, all of it. Fallon didn't just cheat. She built an entire identity off of other people's silence. You leaving? That took away her control. Daniela thinks she might try to flip the story again. Legally, publicly. I sank into the motel chair, heart racing. So what do I do? Mallory paused, then said something I'll never forget. You tell your story first before she rewrites it again. And in that moment I knew what I had to do. Not hide, not retaliate, but speak openly. Honestly, let the silence finally end with my version of the truth. Because if Fallon had mastered the art of narrative, then maybe, just maybe, it was time I told mine. Unfiltered, unashamed, and loud enough that no one could twist it ever again. 2 weeks later, I posted everything. Not on a blog, not on social media, not on some crusade to take her down. I wrote it all in one long, raw post on a forum I used to scroll through during the worst nights of my marriage. This one, Reddit Confessions, the place I used to come to feel less alone, and for once I wasn't just reading, I was telling. I uploaded the full story. No names, no drama, just the truth. What it's like to be erased in slow motion by someone who knows how to smile through lies. What it's like to be called too kind after being used. What it's like to sit in silence while someone rewrites the script of your life. And what it finally feels like to rip the pen out of their hand and write your own ending. The post went viral. Hundreds of comments, messages, people from around the world saying, "This happened to me too," or "I thought I was the only one," or "I needed this right now." And you know what? I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Fallon didn't respond publicly. She moved out of our apartment within the month. I heard she's living somewhere near the coast now. Maybe she started over. Maybe she hasn't. That's her path to walk. As for me, I went back to the little things. Fixing up an old record player I never had time for, walking to the coffee shop instead of driving, volunteering at the animal shelter on weekends. I even reconnected with a few friends I lost while I was too busy trying to keep a failing marriage alive. And Mallory? She's still in my corner, more than a sister-in-law ever had to be. She checks in. She reminds me to breathe, and she reminds me that I wasn't crazy for hoping love meant something more. The best part? I sleep. Like, really sleep. No midnight check-ins, no wondering if someone's lying next to me, no constant pressure in my chest. Just quiet and peace. And finally, the sense that I survived something I thought would destroy me. So if you've ever been there, if you've ever stood in the doorway and watched someone you love turn their back on you without hesitation, let me just say this. You are not the fool for staying too long. You are not the weak one for walking away. And you are not the villain for telling your side of the story. Thank you for listening, for reading, for just being here. This is Reddit Confessions. And if any part of this story reminded you of something you've lived through, whether it was a small moment or a life-changing betrayal, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. What was your moment of truth? Let's talk about it right here, right now. Because silence only wins when we stay quiet. And I'm done being quiet.